Hezbollah appears to have struck while diplomacy was in the spotlight, launching fresh attacks on northern Israel even as US-backed talks sought to calm the Lebanon front. Hezbollah's rocket barrages continued to hit northern Israeli areas, wounding at least one civilian near Tamra. The group also launched what looked like a surprise escalation as Israel reportedly struck 2 vehicles near Beirut. With questions already swirling around the effectiveness of the US pressure campaign on Iran, Israel's wider war posture may be producing new blowback instead of stability. Hezbollah launched fresh rocket barrages on northern Israel on April 15, underlining that the Lebanon front remains active despite wider diplomatic efforts and the separate Iran-related truce. A man was likely wounded in Hezbollah's latest attack on Israel, according to emergency response reports from the aftermath of the barrage. Medics said the injured person was a 61-year-old man hit by shrapnel near Tamra, according to reporting carried by the Times of Israel. The attack came amid reports of an IDF strike on at least 2 vehicles in Lebanon, signaling another rapid round of escalation across the border. According to the Times of Israel, the 2 vehicles were targeted on a coastal highway south of Beirut. The strikes reportedly took place near the seaside towns of Jiyeh and Saadiyat, roughly 70 kilometers from the Israeli border. These latest attacks came just after a historic summit on April 14 in Washington, where Israeli and Lebanese envoys met in an effort to reduce tensions and explore a path toward a broader arrangement. The 2 sides held talks with the hope of reaching a peace deal to end the conflict, marking an unusually direct diplomatic opening between the 2 countries. The 2-hour meeting was described as the highest-level known contact between Israeli and Lebanese representatives in decades. The direct Israel-Lebanon talks were mediated by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who presented the meeting as a rare opportunity for diplomatic progress. However, no date for a follow-up meeting was immediately announced, leaving the next step in the process uncertain. Despite the 2-week Iran truce, Lebanon has continued to witness Israeli military strikes, showing that the ceasefire has not calmed the separate Israel-Hezbollah front. The United States, Israel, and Lebanon issued a joint statement ahead of the trilateral meeting, signaling coordinated diplomatic messaging before the talks began. U.S.-Israel-Lebanon joint statement said, and I quote, "The United States congratulated the 2 countries on this historic milestone and expressed its support for further talks and for the government of Lebanon's plans to restore the monopoly of force and to end Iran's overbearing influence." Washington expressed its hope that talks can exceed the scope of the 2024 agreement and bring about a comprehensive peace deal. Unquote. Hezbollah, however, has openly opposed any such talks between Lebanon and Israel, making clear that it rejects this diplomatic track. A day earlier, Hezbollah had also targeted Israeli forces in Lebanon and launched attacks into northern Israel, showing the pattern of confrontation was already intensifying before the latest barrage. Israel faced multiple setbacks on April 13 amid its military campaign against Hezbollah, as casualties, drone-related injuries, and fresh rocket fire all added to the pressure on the Israeli side. An IDF reservist was killed and 3 other soldiers were wounded in southern Lebanon overnight, marking another serious loss during ongoing Israeli operations in the area. The Times of Israel identified the slain soldier as Sergeant Major Ayel Uriel Bianco, whose death quickly became a focal point of Israeli media coverage. Bianco, 30, was a firefighting vehicle driver in the 188th Armored Brigade and was from Katzrin, according to reports citing the Israeli military. 3 other reservists were wounded in the same incident, with one reported to be moderately wounded and the other 2 sustaining light injuries. All of the injured soldiers were evacuated for medical care, according to reporting that cited the Israeli military's account of the incident. The circumstances of the apparent accident are now under investigation by the military, indicating that Israeli authorities are still trying to establish exactly what happened. On the same day, 2 IDF soldiers were moderately wounded and 6 others were lightly wounded in a separate incident in southern Lebanon. Those injuries were reported after an explosive drone fell in the area where the soldiers were operating, highlighting Hezbollah's continued ability to threaten Israeli forces on the ground. The wounded troops were evacuated to hospital for medical treatment, according to reporting by the Jerusalem Post. The setback came just after the IDF said it had only one major objective remaining in the same area, suggesting that even late-stage operations are still carrying serious risks. Apart from the setbacks in southern Lebanon, Israel also came under fresh Hezbollah fire on April 13, widening the sense of pressure beyond the immediate combat zone. A Hezbollah rocket barrage wounded at least one woman in Nahariya, the Jerusalem Post reported, showing that Israeli civilians also remained vulnerable to incoming attacks. Approximately 7 rockets were launched toward the city, and 6 of them were intercepted by Israeli defenses, according to the same report. The 7th rocket struck a residence and wounded the woman inside, underscoring the damage that can still occur even when most incoming fire is intercepted. The woman was about 60 years old and was lightly wounded, with Megan David Adam saying her injuries were caused by the missile impact and glass fragments. Megan David Adam also treated another person who was suffering from anxiety-related symptoms at the scene of the strike. The IDF later published a video that it said showed the interception of at least one Hezbollah drone, as the military sought to demonstrate its response to the aerial threat. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on April 13 that the IDF was operating deeper inside southern Lebanon in order to keep pushing hostile forces farther away from the Israeli border. Netanyahu claimed that the Israeli military is pushing the enemy away from the border, framing the deeper ground operations as part of Israel's broader security strategy. In the same meeting, Netanyahu also warned that the US-Iran ceasefire could end soon, linking the Lebanon front to wider regional instability. Meanwhile, reports said the United States was considering limited strikes on Iran after the collapse of the talks, suggesting the broader regional crisis could still deepen. At the same time, Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem urged the Lebanese government to cancel planned talks with Israel, signaling continued resistance to any diplomatic track with the Israeli side.
I was somewhere in Lebanon in the security zone with our forces, with our wonderful reserve soldiers, with the courageous commanders. They are doing an incredible job there with unwavering spirit, great determination, and significant successes that must of course be acknowledged. The first thing is that they are pushing the enemy away from the border. We are not talking about 5 points. We are talking about a solid, deeper security zone that both prevents the danger of infiltration and pushes back the anti-tank missile threat. They are also dealing with the terror villages that were adjacent to us. Every terror position, and there are many of them, has simply been flattened. And of course the fighting continues, it has not stopped. It continues constantly. Yesterday and today it has been concentrated in Bint Jbeil. Yesterday I spoke with Vice President J.D. Vance. He called me from his plane on his way back from Islamabad. He briefed me in detail, as officials of this administration do on a daily basis, about the developments in the negotiations in this case, the collapse of the talks. The collapse came from the American side, which could not tolerate Iran's blatant violation of the agreement for entering negotiations. He also made it clear that the central issue on the table from the perspective of President Trump and the United States is the removal of all enriched material and ensuring that there will be no enrichment in the years ahead, which could be decades of no enrichment inside Iran. That is their focus, and of course it is also important to us. Because Iran violated the rules, President Trump decided to impose a naval blockade on them. We of course support this tough stance, and we are fully coordinated with the United States at all times. Today the roles have been reversed. We are the ones hunting our enemies. Those who came to destroy us are now fighting for their own survival. The power of the State of Israel, only 80 years after the Holocaust, can be seen all around the world. Even if the world has forgotten the lessons from the Holocaust, we did not. If we had not acted, if we had not taken our fate into our own hands in the independent State of Israel, with the Israel Defense Forces and our security agencies, the names Isfahan, Natanz, Ferdau, and Bushehr would be mentioned like Auschwitz, Majdanek, and Sobibor. That is exactly the difference. They come to destroy us and we rise up against them. In every generation they rise against us. In this generation we have risen against them. That is an enormous change that all citizens of Israel should welcome. It ensures the central principle: never again. We refuse negotiations with the Israeli entity. These negotiations are futile, and these negotiations need a Lebanese consensus, changing the position from no negotiations to direct negotiations, as is being proposed now. Nobody has the right to take Lebanon on this path without internal agreement among its components, and this did not happen. This negotiation amounts to submission, surrender, and stripping Lebanon of its strength. The opportunity is still there. We call for a historic and heroic position to cancel these negotiations. Because this aggression has no solution but to either surrender or fight. We will never surrender. If anyone thinks of giving up, they can go do that on their own, but we will not give up. We will stay in the battlefield till our last breath. Mr. Prime Minister, what did those who were pressuring Lebanon provide since the formation of your government? All their demands from you are to explode the internal crises, and to give justification to occupation. And there has been no support to prevent the attacks and to build Lebanon. So, let's face the enemy together, and then we agree on the future and everything else. Today, when the political authority takes decisions on March 2nd and criminalizes resistance, it considers resistance fighters to be outlaws. How does it mean that it wants to ask the resistance fighters to coordinate with them in order to arrange the situation of Lebanon together? Is it reasonable? How can the authority comply with any of the procedures when they are criminals? Note that this criminalization is a great sin and this government must retreat. The Lebanese state must correct its position on Iran, its ambassador and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps.